Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure and honor to be here and addressing distinguished audience. Um, Today, as Madam Moderator briefly mentioned, I'll try to present you a new initiative. It's a Global Geothermal Alliance, a new global initiative that was started very recently. I mean, the process started a long time ago, but the initiative has been launched officially a couple of months ago during COP21 in Paris. And I'll try to introduce you the initiative as a platform for dialogue, cooperation, and coordinated action of various stakeholders, players, geothermal players on the ground. So briefly on geothermal, I think I don't need to explain it to you. Probably this is already well known to most of you. But as you know, geothermal isn't technology. It's a clean and mature technology. It offers power, baseload power, and whenever needed, flexibility. It is basically a zero emission resource, and its environmental impact is insignificant. But the question is, why the modest growth? So it is just growing around 3 to 4%, where compared to some other renewable energy technologies, which are growing much faster. But what are the main challenges that the sector is facing? I think some of these challenges has already been discussed, I think, in different sessions and will be also raised maybe later today. Of course, very well known, the exploratory risk and resource assessment risk, the high cost and associated risks, policy uncertainty, and the absence of clear and long-term vision of governments committed to development of geothermal energy and related regulatory arrangements, which includes issues related to how to deal with the environmental aspects, how to deal with licensing, how to deal with permitting, etc. On the capacity side, the lack of institutional capacity in many countries and the developing countries especially, and shortage of skilled personnel. Maybe it's one of the main challenges is the low awareness and limited information in decision makers, in the governments and in utilities. And that's the sector is facing, and which has an impact on the pace of growth of geothermal development. So the starting point for Global Geothermal Alliance is this question: whether international cooperation and strategic partnerships can help overcome key geothermal challenges, and to what extent. So, Global Geothermal Alliance has been developed as a response to this question. As I told you during COP21, there was this official launch, and there was a joint communique on the Global Geothermal Alliance released by the members and partners of the alliance, which are committing to work together, closely cooperate, to address these challenges, and to unlock the potential in many countries that the sector is facing. So it has not been an easy process. It was a long and windy road. It started in early 2014, and over the last 2 years, there has been extensive consultations, discussions among governments, with the private sector, with the industry, with regional organizations, financial institutions, and to see what is needed and what should be the priorities and what should be the structure and the operational principles of the alliance, etc. So it started in early 2014 and at several platforms, and some of them are shown in this on this slide. But also there has been a lot of bilateral discussions, multilateral dialogue, face-to-face meetings, video conferences, teleconferences to come to this point. So basically it was only at the end of last year that we were able to finalize the the concept and come to an agreement among an important number of countries and other partners to launch the initiative. So, of course, I mean, what's the main objective of the alliance? Of course, the main objective is to how to increase the penetration of geothermal energy into the energy mix, as in the form of power generation, but also through other non-power applications related to geothermal use. But we also set an aspirational goal for Global Geothermal Alliance, which is increasing up to 5 times the in geothermal power and more than doubling of geothermal heat. So where do these numbers come from? It comes from IRENA's analysis. IRENA's analysis, which is called Remap 2030, which tells us that basically Remap 2030 is an analysis about how to operationalize UN's target of doubling renewable energy share by 2030. So within that component, we looked at specifically for the geothermal, and we have seen that not only doubling, but increasing 5 times the geothermal power is possible. It's feasible. It's technically feasible. It is economically feasible. So we have set this ambitious goal as an aspirational target of Global Geothermal Alliance. So who are the partners, members and partners of the Global Geothermal Alliance? As you see, it's across the globe. There are 40 countries already affiliated to Global Geothermal Alliance. And those countries are, some of them are with developed geothermal markets, and some of them are emerging geothermal markets. Those countries have already expressed their commitment to be part of this initiative. And additional 27 partners have already expressed interest and commitment to be part of the alliance. So among those, there are regional organizations, there are global organizations, international organizations, there are IFIs, international financing institutions, multilateral development banks, bilateral institutions. There are industry partners basically represented through national associations, national or international or regional associations. There are also various research institutions and representatives of academia. So basically, Alliance is bringing together all stakeholders relevant to the different segments of geothermal supply chain around the table to develop a dialogue and cooperation. So what are the main areas of functionality of Global Geothermal Alliance? Of course, it's a platform for dialogue and cooperation that I repeat telling you. So it's basically how to create synergies, how to use the complementarity of different strengths offered by different members and partners, and how to avoid duplications of efforts also. That's also an important aspect, because there are so many players on the ground and not necessarily talking to each other, and creating that platform will help overcome such challenges that we think the alliance will help enhancing. Partnership for coordinated action, I will come to that point in the next slide, but basically how we can coordinate the efforts, how we can try to bring together the partners who are interested in, who are committed to support certain initiatives and bring them together around that specific initiative to have a very targeted action in terms of technical assistance, capacity building that will lead to unlocking investments. And outreach and raising awareness is an important aspect, because we see a lot of times that geothermal, although it deserves it, but it doesn't. It's not demonstrated as significantly as other, for instance, other renewable energy technologies in global climate debates and also some of the energy debates taking place. So how to raise the profile and visibility of geothermal in those platforms. So coming back to partnership for coordinated action. So basically the focus of the action is how to unlock geothermal investment projects that are facing policy, legal, regulatory, fiscal, funding, and capacity building challenges. So all sorts of challenges they are facing. So identify those investment projects and try to solve the associated challenges with those projects so that these projects can materialize, can start, the investments can take place. So of course, I mean, we need to have our actions, the Global Geothermal Alliance's actions should lead to impact. So how can we ensure that impact? So why don't we, that's why the discussion was, and agreement was, to how to enable most mature projects or countries with transformative potential so that the results that would result in high impact on energy mix, on access rate, or kind of in the economy of the country in overall. So the assistance will be in the form of various ways. So it could be through strengthening, enabling policy and regulatory frameworks, to raising awareness on and propose improvements on risk mitigation funds, targeted financing mechanisms, facilitate access to financing and risk mitigation instruments, and enhance capacities. So these are some of the actions that Alliance can take in order to address those challenges that are blocking, hindering the investments in geothermal. So what are the operational principles? Of course, the neutrality and transparency. That's most importantly, Irina being on the facilitator and coordinator side of this initiative, it's extremely important that the alliance is operated in a neutral and transparent basis. So there's no preferential treatment for a particular country, technology, and scheme. So it's everything is taking place on equal grounds. Of course, I mentioned about the avoidance of duplications and overlaps. That's why it's important to see what is already on the ground and build on it. So existing structures, programs, and facilities should be taken as a starting point in building the additional structures and cooperation mechanisms. From the start, we didn't want to put in complicated administrative procedures, structures, and processes, and try to make it action-oriented. So basically, rather than creating different bodies, decision-making structures and governing boards, etc. So we try to make it very action-oriented and to avoid bureaucracy. And in that perspective, now the Alliance is working on an action plan. It's a work program. So basically trying to identify the key priority actions that the Alliance should focus on. We are envisaging that within a month time, this action plan will be finalized and endorsed by the Alliance. So in terms of operational principles, what the Alliance is going to do, they're going to identify specific activities under this action plan, and they will go back to its constituency, members and partners, and they're going to ask to them that, are you interested to support this particular activity? And are you ready to finance this activity, provide funding support to this activity? So around each activity, there will be a number of members and partners who are already committed to support this particular activity, so that that's small groups of activities with to take the action forward and basically to come up with then results in the shortest possible time. In terms of priorities of actions, of course, we developed also a criteria in selection of actions and projects that could be supported by the Alliance. Of course, I mean, if you're going to do a project and an activity in one country, there should be an acceptance and interest expressed by the recipient government or regional organization or whoever recipient is of that GGA's technical support. So that's an important criteria. Contribute to near-term improvements of enabling frameworks for investment, so the action should lead to outcome. and sustained impact on fostering geothermal deployment. So the most impactful activities to be chosen. Of course, it's the complementarity with activities of other development partners. So basically, in one country or one region, if the activity is envisaged, so it should take into consideration what's already on the ground and to complement it rather than compete with it. And as much as possible, the activities chosen should be replicable elsewhere in another country or in another region. So that will help scaling up the impact. So what's the role of IRENA in the GGA? It has two functions. One is to coordinate and facilitate the GGA activities. So it's about coordinating the work program, organizing meetings, to help in the selection of priority projects that the Alliance is going to focus on, etc. But there's a second function, which is the supporting regional and country-specific activities. Of course, they should be in line with IRENA's own work program and the availability of resources. So basically, IRENA also can take part in some of those activities, not necessarily in all of the activities, but in some of the activities, IRENA can be part of the group of GGA members and partners who are supporting that specific activity. Of course, IRENA has already several regional or thematic programs which are taking place under IRENA work program. SITS Lighthouses is a support program for islands. So in Pacific, and especially in Pacific and in Caribbean, there are various islands which have rich geothermal resources. So under the SITS Lighthouses program, the geothermal aspect, geothermal part is also quite significant. Clean energy corridors that we have been implementing in different parts of the world. So basically how to integrate more renewables into the national systems, as well as how to promote cross-border trade of renewable electricity. We are implementing in Africa, in the East and Southern Africa, of course, in the Eastern Africa, countries, it's very relevant. Geothermal aspects are very relevant. Now we started implementing in Central America also. That's very relevant. So wherever it's relevant, the geothermal aspects are already taken into consideration. And there are two new initiatives that IRENA started. One is the Pacific Capacity Building Initiative, as well as the methodology for skills needs assessment that we have developed during our project in Andes region. So we are planning to implement it in other regions to help countries to make a thorough assessment of skills, geothermal skill set that they have, and what is needed, what is not. On top of that, of course, IRENA has a rich toolbox of various instruments that it's making available to the Global Geothermal Alliance. Renewable readiness assessment, post-RRA advisory technical assistance, the remap that I have already referred to earlier, as well as there are certain key flagship initiatives such as Sustainable Energy Marketplace, which was initiated in different parts of the world it's a matchmaking service between the projects and financial institutions, and how to facilitate access to financing. Global Atlas is the tool for resource assessment. There's a geothermal component of Global Atlas, which is providing geothermal resource maps globally. So these are some of the tools that IRENA is offering, and also with the help of the GGA, we want to further develop those tools and make them available for our membership, for the GGA membership and the partners. So finally, final words on the alliance is basically success and sustainability of alliance depends on various factors, but most importantly maybe, of course, and continuing commitment and participation of its members and partners is essential. And the credibility of the alliance as an authoritative sort of information that will also have an impact on that. But most importantly, the actions that alliance is going to take should lead to substantial impact on the acceleration of the geothermal deployment. So that will be very critical on the future of the alliance, and we have already a broad agreement within the alliance that should be the highest priority in the actions that alliance is going to undertake. Thank you very much.